Welcome back. Joining us now, John Lott, a gun advocate and the author of two books, More Guns, Less Crime, and The Bias Against Guns. With the other side of the debate from Toronto, Wendy Cukier of the Coalition for Gun Control. Mr. Lott, it's been a week now since the shootings in Newtown. Lots of talk since then, obviously, about a move towards greater gun control. Are you and the NRA now on the wrong side of the national conversation in the U.S., where nobody's listening to your side anymore?
Well, I'm not sure that's true. There's a Gallup poll that just came out, I guess a day ago, that indicated that, the majority of people didn't support a lot of new gun control laws. So I suppose maybe it depends on what poll you want to go and look at. But look, this is a tragic thing. Everybody's heart's ripped out from this. And I understand the desire for people to try to do things in certain ways. You see something bad that happens with a gun. The natural reaction is, well, if I just take guns away, bad things won't happen. Unfortunately, the world isn't quite that simple. I mean, one of the problems that you have is that when you go and you ban guns, for example, it's basically good, law-abiding citizens who obey the rules and not the criminals. And that's the reason why every place in the world, not just D.C. and Chicago in the United States, but the U.K. and Ireland and other countries that have banned guns have seen murder rates go up after the ban.
But what about this specific proposal made by the NRA's Wayne LaPierre today, that there should be armed guards at every school in the United States? Is that practical? Is it workable? Won't those guards be the first to die?
Well, that's what I've argued. What I would do is go back to where we were prior to 1995, and that is allow people to carry permanent concealed handguns just like they do every place else in the states, into schools. Before we stopped that under the Clinton administration, there was not one single problem that had ever been reported with anybody with a concealed handgun permit. And I just give you one important fact here. If you look since 1950, every single multiple victim public shooting in which more than 3 people have been killed, with just one exception, has occurred where we banned guns. And it's not just true in the United States, it's also true in Europe, even in Switzerland, a country where it's extremely easy to carry concealed handguns. Half the country you don't even need a permit. They've had several multiple victim public shootings, but they all occur in those very tiny areas within Switzerland that you're not allowed to carry a concealed handgun. Can I just say one thing? The best way to think about this is, let's say, God forbid, a violent criminal was stalking you or your family. Would you feel safer putting a sign in front of your home that said, this home is a gun-free zone? I don't know any gun control advocates in the United States who would put up such a sign. And there's a good reason why they wouldn't, because that would actually be a magnet for the criminal to attack them there, because he would have less to worry about. He would know people couldn't defend themselves. And yet we put those signs up in front of all sorts of places, and that's where they attack.
Wendy Cukier, you've heard John Lott's argument, and I think you're familiar with his books, which are chock full of statistics to back up the points that he's just made. What do you say in reply?
Well, as I said, I did a book called The Global Gun Epidemic, and beg to differ with him on Switzerland. They have firearms in their homes, but they most certainly do not carry concealed weapons.
Sure.
The United States is one of the few countries in the industrialized world where people are allowed to carry handguns. The other thing that's really clear is the research that's been done by public health experts throughout the U.S. shows that if there's a gun in your home, you're more likely to die in a homicide or a suicide than if there isn't a gun in your home, because in fact most people in Canada and the United States, in fact anywhere in the world where we have high-income countries, are killed by people they know, not strangers. So random acts of violence and tragic massacres like the one we have seen in the United States are not the typical way in which Americans are murdered with firearms. In fact, the availability of firearms is a factor in promoting homicide. And as I said at the outset, you just have to, to talk about firearms violence increasing in the United Kingdom, where the rate of murder is 1/5 what it is in the United States, and as I said at the outset, where last year they had about 40 gun murders, is simply preposterous. And it's if arming for self-protection worked, the United States would be the safest country
Look,
in the world,
there's
and
lots
it's
of reasons.
not.
Well, John Lott, let me just put this point to you. Isn't Nancy Lanza, Adam Lanza's mother, the example that proves Wendy's point? She was the NRA's poster child in as much as she had guns all over the house. And, of course, it ended up killing her. What's the answer to that?
Well, I mean, people who plan in advance can get guns in lots of different ways and other types of weapons. Look, the claim that Wendy's making about the risk of having guns in the home, you have to understand how that study was put together. What they did, they'd find somebody who died in or near a residence, and they asked the relatives of the deceased if a gun was owned in the home, and then they just assumed that if you died from a gun, that it was that gun. In fact, when researchers have gone back and looked at the data, they found that 86% of those deaths were actually due to a weapon brought in from the outside by somebody else, not the gun in the home, and that even includes the suicides there. And just doing that completely, correcting that one error, completely flips the results that she's talking about there. But, you know, you look across the world, you look at the UK. People can go to the Home Office in England and look from 96 on to see what happens to overall homicides. And it's very clear the huge increase that you have. Now, it's lower. There are lots of reasons why crimes are lower. If, you know, you go back to England in 1900, you know how many gun murders, 20 years before they had any regulations, you know how many gun murders there were in London, a city of 8 million people? 2. Gun ownership was incredibly common. The gap between the United States and England has actually gotten smaller as gun restrictions in Canada or in England have gotten more restrictive.
All right, John Lott and Wendy Cukier, I want to thank you both. We're going to have to leave it there for now. Thank you both very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.